Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me for some Advent project planning. So let's talk through it. Hey, hello and welcome. I think this is going to be a very different format of video from what I normally do. It'll probably be pretty chatty and planny, just less formal. Not that my videos are that formal, but less formal just because I wanted to sit down today and talk about what I'm planning on doing with my yarn advent this year. So this is the first year that I've gotten a yarn advent from a hand dyer. So through the month of December, I will have 24 20-gram mini skeins to open and then a final 100-gram skein on the 25th day of December. So, traditional advent calendar, but for yarn from a hand dyer. So this is the first year I've gotten one. I got it, my mom bought it for me for my birthday. So my birthday's in March. So this has been the longest birthday present wait. I'm very excited to finally, receive it and open it. And so I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do with it because I want to be really intentional because it's a large purchase. Like yarn advents are not cheap. And I just want to be really, really mindful of what I would get the most use out of and what I would enjoy the most out of with an advent. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about my advent and I think I'm coming up with a plan, and so I wanted to talk through it with you all. So, to start us off, I do want to give a little bit of information about the advent I got. And so, I got the yarn advent from Zakami Yarns. They are a wonderful hand dyer that I've bought from before. They're based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and the theme is belonging, which I really liked the inspiration behind it. It was very much about just what does belonging mean to us and a good chance to also reflect. Like, it was kind of nice that it had this kind of reflecting message behind it and like will hopefully help encourage me to reflect on what communities I belong to. How do I belong to things in my life? What does it mean to belong? So I think that it's going to be a nice reflection there, and I really enjoyed the color palette. It's made to be a pretty neutral fade as well, so it'll go from like a pretty light tan color all the way to like um, a dark purplish reddish color. And so I'll have some of the pictures that they put out on the screen, but yeah, I think that it's going to be really cool and fun. I'm excited to open it every day and see what the colors exactly are and just enjoy that and see how they kind of play together. Um, so that's the advent I got. And because it's a fade, I've been thinking a lot about wanting to do a sweater with it because, like, I think some yarn advents are so fun with each skein being really exciting, but it's hard to pair them together. I will say though that I sample knit for Ryan of Salty Blonde Fine Fibers. I sample knit a pattern in her advent and it was brighter, but it still had a really nice cohesive fade. So there's definitely a good middle ground too, but I think that a neutral fade or more neutral fade advent is going to be really nice to make a sweater. And so I am thinking that through and yeah, wanted to talk about it. And so I am going to start by saying like I saw an idea from What's Millie Making on Instagram last year when she was working on her advent sweater and really loved what she did. She used the Oba sweater by AGO Knit and she had a yarn advent from the Fiber Fox, which was pretty neutral and it looked beautiful. I don't know if she ever got further than the yoke on it or she didn't post about it, but the yoke looked really beautiful and I really enjoyed the way that was looking. And so I've been wanting to do something similar for an entire year. So doing like a funnel neck colorwork sweater, but I didn't love the pattern of the Oba sweater. So I've kind of expanded to look around. And so I have some patterns that I can show as things that I thought about, and I made a Ravelry bundle, so that'll be linked if you want to do something similar with your yarn advent. I'll have a link with all the patterns that I've considered. But yeah, just been looking around, thinking about it, and I think I'm ultimately going to design my own. But I'll show you what I was thinking about first. So I'm going to screen record on my computer so that we can scroll through this together. because I did consider a lot of different patterns, like a lot of patterns before I landed on the ones or landed on designing my own. So I have a whole bundle. There's like 25 patterns in here that I considered as well that just have soft color work. They're all kind of different weights, so they might not all work, but maybe if you paired them with something. But you can see tons of different color work raglans. I was just looking for color work and a raglan and came up with a lot of options. I specifically really like the flurry sweater here, which has the contrast color as the um, raglan seams, but I thought that there'd probably be too much going on with the fade and the contrast color because they're really close together. They're used in equal amounts. Same kind of with this pine warbler sweater, honeybee sweater, I think could be better, but I wanted a funnel neck and I wanted a wider raglan. And yeah, there's tons in here. I don't need to narrate all of them, of course, but this laneway sweater could also be great. I'd probably extend the color work all the way down. The partner pullover could be really fun. I did heavily consider doing that one. Alley sweater, again, I'd extend the color work all the way down. Here's the Oba sweater. So this is the one that What's Millie Making used and is beautiful. But I don't know. I wanted more. I wanted something slightly different. I should say more. And there's some, normal non-colorwork sweaters in here too that I think could be really lovely with a fading advent. So it'd be simple and then just faded yarn throughout. So I have an Andrea Mowry, a petite knit pattern, got, more colorwork sweaters, of course. Again, the mist sketch sweater here, I would make the color work go all the way down. Mushroom raglan's really fun. I considered heavily doing like a mosaic color work instead of doing traditional stranded color work. So I heavily considered the pressed flowers pullover and the Junco, but decided ultimately that the pressed flowers, I'd want the flowers to be in my advent, and there was nowhere near enough yardage in the pressed flowers contrast color to warrant using my advent for it. It was like a third of what I will get in my advent, so didn't decide to use that, but you could maybe use it as the main color, or figure out the yardage for yourself and make another project with your leftovers. Junco, I think, was a similar situation. Alder sweater could also be beautiful, but I thought like I wanted there to be a pretty distinct difference between the main color and how often you use the main color versus how often you use the contrast color, and a lot of these had similar, almost equal amounts, so decided against that. Cloud blouse I also think would be a really nice just slow fade. This spot sweater, there's two versions. There's a color edition and there's a traditional single color version, but I think just use it as your main color, or use your advent as your main color and fade with a nice contrast could also be lovely. I did heavily consider this. And then I have a few that are not color work. I love the Seaway pullover, the Busan sweater, and sweater number 13. I've just always loved all of those. They're nice, beautiful, slightly textured or cabled sweaters, and could be really nice with just a casual fade, but I felt like they were not exactly what I wanted because I do really want that look of a slow, casual fade. So I have changed course and decided to design myself. What I've decided to do is find a pattern that I liked from this book, which is Alternate. It's a Stitch Dictionary by Andrea Rangel, and there's another version of this. It's called Knitivation. And so I marked the crap out of this looking for a pattern that I really loved from the color work, and I've landed on one that I'm pretty sure I'm going to use. And so I'm trying to hide the actual chart. I want to knit this mustard chart, and so it's a 16 stitch repeat, and I think it's just stunning. It's a really just lovely look. So I want to make this in a nice raglan. So I'm going to probably use, honestly, the dimensions of the this sweater that I made a few months ago at this point. This is the Mountains and Seas sweater, which is actually currently in testing. So I designed it back in June, and it's a raglan that I really like the shape of. It obviously has a V-neck, but I think that I can use similar stitch counts, but change the neckline obviously to make it more of a funnel neck, and then plug in the nice color work, and should be lovely. I Right now I feel like it's going to be simple, but it's obviously not. I think that it's going to be probably pretty complex to actually get into it, but it's a fun plan for now. And so, yeah, I spent a long time looking through this book, and there were quite a few others that I considered heavily. Like, I love this Traveler's Joy pattern, but I was looking for something that didn't have too big of a stitch repeat, so that it could be easier to change the size of. I like this crystal pattern here. I'm trying to hide these motifs, but or the actual designs, how to do it. So yeah, I mean, this book was a great resource. I heavily considered this prism pattern as well, but felt like maybe it was too busy, and it's a 24 stitch repeat. So yeah, landed on the nice mustard pattern, or this expansion one at the bottom here is also really cool. But landed on mustard to have a nice kind of mosaic flower look. I think it really looks like mosaic tiles with flowers, and so I think that'll be really lovely. Now I just have the question of what contrast color to choose, and I'm definitely going to wait to choose my exact contrast color until after I've opened the entire advent, because I would hate to order my quantity of yarn and then realize it's not going to work, because I think the one problem with this idea that I'm slightly nervous about in my head is the fact that the the advent calendar fades from a pretty light to a pretty dark color, and so most tones of colors are already, you know, represented in this advent. So we'll have to see what I can actually use as a contrast color to where it's going to show up and not be super muddy with the majority of the colors. So I'll probably have to compromise somewhere and decide, like, oh, the super light might not stand out super well, but it'll look great once we get into the midtones and darker, or vice versa. If there's not that many midtones, I'll choose like a mid-toned color. So I'm definitely considering how to choose that, and slightly concerned about what color I can use, but I have been thinking about it a lot. I basically used Canva and a bunch of color apps, like, that tell you the hex codes of colors, and then ones that tell you what the opposite of that hex code is, to determine what potential color work motifs I could use, or what potential contrast colors I could use. And so here's the summary of all of these together. So there's, 6 main colors that are shown from Zakami in what this advent will be. And so I pulled out those 6 and then found their opposite colors to make a diagram of what potential colors I could use. And so I honestly really like the deep color. So I really like this deep kind of petrol blue. So we'll see if that will work, but here I'll show you in a little more detail. And there's actually a double Sunday color from Sandiscard color that is quite similar to this really deep blue, and so that would be really nice, because then I'd already have the yarn picked out. But I think that thinking through the colors now, so I'm not super overwhelmed, you can see I'm definitely considering a blue, because a lot of these are like these warm tones, other than there's like one kind of warmish green, which the contrast would be like a purple. Or there, I shouldn't say contrast, but the exact opposite on the color wheel would be like a purple. And I think that would be fun to have it be like an opposite color. So I'm leaning towards a blue as my opposite. But we really just have to see what comes out of this advent, because it could be a lot of different things. But yeah, I really am leaning towards this nice blue down here. I think that the petrol, it looks lovely. I don't love this exact mid-tone color. I'm not crazy about like mid-tone colors that much. And so this kind of blue that is just like classroom blue. I don't know. To me, it's like elementary school blue, which is also a nice color. I just gravitate towards either darker colors or lighter colors. And so, not crazy about that one, but if it works the best with the Advent, I'll probably end up with going with that. So, I do want to be really mindful when choosing my Advent color, my contrast color, about having not only opposite color wheel or different enough colors on the color wheel, but different enough shades. So, if you've ever done color work before, this is probably not revolutionary. You've probably heard this, but um, looking at all of the colors in black and white, I'll probably take a picture of my Advent, turn it to black and white, and then choose my top few yarn colors to bring in as a contrast, take pictures of them, put them in black and white, and compare those, because then you can really see the tone difference or the shade difference, I guess, and see, you want one that's darker than the others. That's what's really going to show up on your color work more than just having them be very different hues. It's more about the difference in shade or tone or depth of color, I guess. So it's really going to depend a lot, but I do think that a blue would also be nice just to have like an opposite color wheel situation, and that'll be a nice contrast like that. The blue and these warm tones will look nice together to begin with, but then with the added idea of hopefully also finding one that is a different enough tone from the majority of the colors to where it's not going to look very muddy the whole time. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this Advent, clearly. I am really excited to get started on my colors, start on knitting for this. I think that what I'm designing will be really nice for my purposes for making an Advent, but will hopefully also be a really nice sweater. So I will probably, if this goes well, we'll see, have this, open for testing in maybe February. And so people could also knit it for themselves if they wanted, either with an Advent or without an Advent. But I am really thinking a lot about it. And so I wanted to sit down and talk about this because I think a lot of people are thinking about their advents if you are getting one. The other thing that I'm interested about in the advent that I think I have a plan for, but we shall see how this works out, and I'm interested if others have ideas, is the fading colors is fine in the yoke, but once you get to the arms and splitting, you can't just consistently like knit until you're out of yarn because you have sleeves as well. And if you want it to consistently fade and the sleeves not to just be like randomly different colors, you have to pull, you have to split up your yarn. So I think I have a system of I have to just, since I'm designing the pattern, I can do this easily. I'll have to count how many stitches will be in my body versus how many stitches will be in my sleeves. And I'll probably just leave the sleeves straight so that I'm not having to then change my calculations as the knitting goes down. But I'll figure out, I have, you know, on my sleeves plus my body, I have 100% of my stitches. So on the body, how many stitches do I have? It's probably about like 85% of my stitches will be on the body, and then 85 or like 15% of my stitches will be in the arms total. So like 7.5% each. And then I will have to meticulously weigh out all my 20-gram skeins to make sure that 85% of the yarn is going to the body and 20% or 15% is going to the arms. So it's definitely going to be an interesting process to figure that out, but I think it just is going to take a day of me sitting down, weighing out all my yarn and measuring it, and just making sure I have nicely divided little balls that are nicely labeled. So it's going to be a process, but I think that it's going to work out well in the end. And I think like so I knit the sample knit for petite or for Salty Blonde Fibers a little while ago, where I was working with her advent, and I figured out the best system for me to keep track of the colors in her advent, so I was working in the correct order, was to actually just use different colored stitch markers and make a little rainbow for myself from pink to purple, and just have 6 different rainbow colors, to be able to knit through those so that I could keep good track of, okay, I have 6 at a time. I'm knitting these 6 pink through this order. I hope we all know the rainbow. So, you know, 6, yeah. So I had those, and I think that that's a good system that I will continue to use for this Advent, to not be overwhelmed by 24 mini skeins all wound up at once. It was kind of nice to break it up into 6 at a time that I wound up, and 6 at a time that I had to think about and use and make sure I was using in the correct order. So I'll probably do something similar again. And so I'll have a few weekends devoted, or a few hours on a weeknight devoted to just weighing out different amounts of yarn, making sure that they work. But I don't really have to worry about that until I'm through the yoke. So I'll probably start on the yoke, get through that, and then do my math and start weighing out all my skeins. So I think that it's gonna work out well. I think it's gonna be a really fun system, and I think it'll just be enjoyable. We'll see, you know, how it goes. And I'm gonna enjoy myself. I hope that I get a beautiful sweater in the end. We shall see if it's, you know, stressful. It's probably gonna be stressful, but we'll see if it fails. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will. I think that I am putting a lot of thought into this, and I think that there are lots of people that are able to help me if it's harder than I think. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear if you got a yarn advent this year, what you were planning on doing with it. If you did not get a yarn advent and you really wanted one, I know that it's a really pricey and expensive thing to get, and I hope you can maybe save up or get one as a gift next year, because hopefully it's really enjoyable. Again, this is my first one, so we'll see how much I really enjoy it. But I think I will love it. I know a lot of people that hate yarn advents, that have gotten them in the past and never know what to do with them, or just dislike them for different reasons. So if you're one of those people, I'd love to hear your opinions as well. But yeah, I think that this is going to be a really fun season. I'm really excited to experiment with this advent. And of course, it's a few months off before I'm actually able to start, but I wanted to make this video now so that if you do have an advent coming and you're planning on knitting through it as you open it, that maybe you could use one of these ideas. So that's all from me. So I hope that you've had a great week and you're going to have a great week coming up. And I will talk to you all soon. So thank you. Bye.